The first time I called Grace Miller baby, I was standing in the cereal aisle holding a family-sized box of cinnamon squares like it was evidence in a trial. And I didn't mean to say it. That was the problem. I was 29 years old, a reasonably functional adult man, a commercial electrician with a mortgage, a decent truck, and enough sense not to flirt with my best friend in public like some fool who'd been dropped on his head by love. But there I was on a Thursday evening at Maple and Vine Market watching Grace reach for the top shelf with one hand while the other held our shopping basket. And the word just left me. Careful, baby, the shelf's loose. Grace froze. So did I. Somewhere behind us, a woman squeezed a cantaloupe and pretended not to listen. Grace slowly turned her head toward me, her dark blonde hair slipping over one shoulder, her green eyes wide in that dangerous way they got when she was either about to laugh or ruin my entire life. "What did you just call me?" she asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Which was impressive because I had known Grace since I was 19, and in 10 years I had always managed to say something. Usually the wrong thing, sure, but something. "I said careful," I tried. Her eyebrow lifted. "No, you said careful, baby." The woman with the cantaloupe moved closer to the bananas. I looked at the cereal box in my hands and considered crawling into it. Grace Miller was my best friend, my emergency contact, my Sunday morning pancake critic, the person who knew I hated olives but liked olive oil, which she claimed made me emotionally inconsistent. She had slept on my couch after breakups, dragged me to weddings, patched my knuckles after I shocked myself on a job because I was too stubborn to check a breaker twice. And I had been in love with her for 2 years, 9 months, and maybe one Tuesday, depending on when you count betrayal by the heart. I just hadn't said it out loud. Not to her, not to anyone. Because Grace didn't do easy love. She did guarded jokes and quick exits. She did almost truths while stirring pasta. She did "I'm fine" in the same tone other people used for "the building is on fire." Her parents had treated marriage like a courtroom. Her last serious boyfriend had treated loyalty like an optional feature. So I stayed useful, safe, funny, the best friend, and then my mouth apparently decided it had had enough of cowardice in aisle 7. Grace set the basket down. There were apples in it, pasta, a jar of marinara, 2 bottles of that expensive cold brew she pretended not to buy unless it was on sale. We weren't even shopping for anything romantic. She had texted me an hour earlier, "Emergency. My fridge contains mustard, half a lime, and moral failure." So I picked her up after work, like I always did. We had argued in the parking lot about whether buying 3 kinds of cheese counted as meal planning. She said yes. I said it counted as a cry for help. She said that was rich coming from a man who owned 7 identical gray t-shirts. Normal, comfortable, dangerous, apparently. Grace stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough that I caught the scent of her shampoo, something clean and citrusy that had been ruining my concentration for years. "Liam," she said softly. That was me. Liam Walker. Professional wire tamer. Amateur emotional disaster. "Grace," I answered, like roll call might save me. Her mouth twitched. "You're blushing." "I'm warm." "It's the refrigerated aisle next to us. I have a medical condition." "Being full of nonsense?" "Chronic." She laughed then, and the sound loosened something in my chest. That was what she did. She could make me feel exposed and forgiven in the same breath. But then the laugh faded. Her gaze dropped to my hand. I hadn't realized I was still holding the cereal box against my chest like a shield. She reached out, took it from me, and put it in the cart. Then, without making a joke, without looking away, Grace slipped her fingers through mine. My brain went completely quiet. We had touched before. Of course we had. A million times. Hugs after bad days. Her feet tucked under my thigh during movies. My hand at the small of her back in crowded bars. Her head on my shoulder during thunderstorms when she claimed she wasn't scared, just respectful of electricity. But this was different. This was chosen. Her palm fit, against mine like it had been waiting for me to stop pretending I didn't know the shape of it. "Say it again," she whispered. The cantaloupe woman dropped a lemon. I stared at Grace. There were moments in a man's life when he understood that if he made one wrong joke, ducked one honest thing, or hid behind one more smirk, he would deserve the empty apartment waiting for him at the end of the night. "Grace," I said, my voice lower than I meant it to be. She squeezed my hand. "Not that." My heart slammed once, hard. I should tell you Grace was beautiful in a way that never announced itself politely. It snuck up on you while she was reading labels with her glasses sliding down her nose, or standing barefoot in my kitchen complaining that my knives were dull, or singing badly to old radio songs while she painted my spare room because she said beige was the color of surrender. She was beautiful when she was teasing me. She was worse when she was vulnerable, and right then, in the middle of a grocery store, she looked terrified. Not of me, of wanting to hear it. I swallowed. "Baby," I said. Her eyes closed for half a second. Not dramatic, not movie star fainting, just a tiny break in the armor. Then she smiled, and it wasn't the smile she used on waiters or coworkers or relatives, asking why she was still single. It was small, private, mine, if I was brave enough to reach for it. "Okay," she said. I let out a laugh that sounded like I'd been holding my breath since 2014. "Okay?" She nodded, still holding my hand. "Okay." What does okay mean? It means don't ruin it by interrogating me next to the oatmeal. That's fair. And don't get weird. "Grace, I called you baby in public. The weird ship has sailed." Her thumb brushed over my knuckle. Slowly. Once. The kind of touch that could rewrite a decade if you let it. "I liked it," she said. There it was. Small words, huge damage. My whole life shifted 2 inches to the left. I wanted to say everything. That I had measured every woman I dated against the way Grace looked at me when I made her laugh. That I hated when she called me after bad dates because I wanted to be the man she came home to, not the man she debriefed with. That once last winter she had fallen asleep on my shoulder during a snowstorm, and I had sat completely still for 90 minutes because I didn't want to lose the weight of her. Instead, because I was still me, I said, "I'm going to need a minute." Grace laughed again, but her hand stayed in mine. "Take two. We still need eggs." We started walking like that, hand in hand, past soup, past crackers, past 3 elderly women who absolutely noticed and smiled like they'd been waiting for us to stop being idiots. At the end of the aisle, Grace leaned her shoulder into mine. It was barely anything. It was everything. "So," she said too casually, "how long have you been accidentally calling me that in your head?" I nearly drove the cart into a display of pickles. She grinned. "That long?" "Define long." "Liam." I looked down at her, and for one reckless second I thought maybe this wasn't a disaster. Maybe this was the door we had both been standing beside for years, pretending it was a wall. Then her phone buzzed in the basket. She glanced at the screen, her smile disappeared. I felt her fingers tense around mine. "What is it?" I asked. Grace turned the phone just enough for me to see the message. From her sister, Audrey. "Mom invited Ryan to dinner Sunday. She says it's time you two talk like adults. Don't bring Liam unless you're ready to explain what he really is." Grace didn't move. Neither did I. The grocery store kept humming around us like nothing had changed. But her hand was still in mine. And for the first time in 10 years, I realized the question wasn't whether I loved Grace Miller. The question was whether she was finally ready to let me stand there when the whole room asked what I was to her. Grace stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I knew Ryan's name the way a person knows the location of an old bruise. You don't think about it every day, but press it wrong and the whole body remembers. Ryan Vale had been Grace's ex for 8 months, 3 weeks, and enough emotional cleanup that I had stopped counting. He was charming in the way a salesman was charming right before he sold you a roof you didn't need. Her mother adored him, which said more about her mother than it did about Ryan. Grace locked her phone and dropped it into the basket. "Well," she said brightly, "eggs." That was Grace for "I am not bleeding in public, thank you. I didn't move the cart." She tugged my hand once. "Liam, do you want to go?" "To the egg section? Yes, I have ambitious breakfast goals." "To Sunday dinner." Her jaw shifted. A couple walked past us arguing quietly about oat milk. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere, a child was negotiating for gummy worms with the intensity of a hostage situation. Grace looked at our joined hands like she was surprised they were still joined. I don't know, she admitted. There? A real answer. I stepped closer, not crowding her, just enough that my shoulder blocked the main aisle from view. Okay. Her eyes flicked up. That's it? That's it. You're not going to do the thing? What thing? The noble Liam thing, where your jaw gets all square and you say, I'll go with you, like you're volunteering for war. My jaw is naturally square. It is, she said, then seemed annoyed with herself for noticing. That did something reckless to my pulse. I squeezed her hand. If you want me there, I'll be there. If you don't, I'll be at home eating cereal out of a mixing bowl and pretending I have dignity. Her mouth softened. But Grace, I said, I'm not going as your decoy. She blinked. The words had come out before I could sand down the edges, but once they were there, I didn't want them back. Her voice went quiet. What does that mean? It means if I sit next to you at your mother's table while Ryan smiles like he still has a claim, I'm not doing it as your fake anything. My thumb moved over hers. I can be your friend anywhere. I've done that for 10 years, but if you ask me to come now, after... I glanced down at our hands. After this? I need to know I'm there because you want me there. Grace's face changed. Not fear exactly, recognition. Like I'd turned on a light in a room she'd been avoiding. I do want you there, she said. My chest went tight. Then she added, That's the problem. I huffed a small laugh. Usually I prefer being wanted to be less problematic. It is when wanting you makes everything real. The grocery store disappeared a little. I could still hear carts rattling and freezer doors shutting, but Grace was the only thing in focus. Her fingers were warm. Her cheeks had gone pink. She looked like she wanted to run and stay pressed against me at the same time. Is that what you want? I asked. For it to be real? She looked at me for a long second. Then she said, I liked when you called me baby. My breath caught. I liked your hand on my back at Aaron's wedding last spring, she continued, words coming faster now, like she had to get them out before courage abandoned her. I liked that you remembered I hate carnations, and that you showed up with Thai food when my furnace broke, and that when I fall asleep during movies, you never wake me up. You drool sometimes. Her eyes narrowed. Sorry, emotional moment. Bad timing. Grace laughed, but it trembled at the edge. Then she stepped close enough that the toes of her boots nearly touched mine. I liked thinking maybe someday you'd get tired of being careful, she whispered. That sentence hit me harder than any confession had a right to. I lifted our joined hands slow enough for her to stop me and pressed my mouth to her knuckles. Her lips parted. It wasn't a kiss-kiss, not the one I'd imagined more times than was healthy, but it was intimate enough that the world seemed to hold still around it. I got tired a long time ago, I said against her skin. Grace inhaled softly. Then, because we apparently enjoyed emotional vulnerability with a side of dairy, a store employee rolled past us with a cart full of yogurt and said, Excuse me. We jumped apart by approximately 3 inches, which was not enough to fool anyone. Grace cleared her throat. Eggs. Eggs, I agreed. We made it 2 aisles before she reached for my hand again. This time, she didn't look at me first. She just took it, and I let myself smile like an idiot at a row of shredded cheese. By the time we reached checkout, our basket looked like 2 people, had attempted responsible adulthood, and been distracted by feelings. Pasta, eggs, cereal, 3 cheeses, strawberries, and a loaf of bread, Grace claimed was too pretty not to buy. The cashier, a teenage girl with blue eyeliner, scanned the strawberries and looked between us. You two are cute. Grace opened her mouth. I waited for the correction. We're not together. He's my friend. Actually, he's just... Grace squeezed my hand where it rested on the card handle. Thanks, she said. One word. A relationship step disguised as politeness. I nearly proposed between the card reader and the gum display. Outside, the evening had cooled. The sky over the parking lot was lavender and Grace's hair lifted in the breeze. We loaded the groceries into my truck in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was full. Too full, maybe. When I shut the tailgate, Grace was standing by the passenger door, arms folded, watching me. "What?" I asked. "You're being very calm." I'm screaming internally. "About you." Her smile was immediate and devastating. "Good answer." I leaned back against the truck, leaving space beside me. After a second, she came and stood there too, shoulder touching mine. No aisle, no audience. No ex's name glowing on a phone. Just Grace and the faint smell of asphalt after a warm day. "I'm scared," she said. I turned my head. She stared out at the parking lot. "Not of you. You're you. That's what scares me. If this goes wrong, I don't just lose some guy. I lose Sunday pancakes. I lose your stupid gray shirts. I lose the person who knows when I'm lying about being fine. You won't lose me. You can't promise that." "No," I said. "I can't promise nothing will ever hurt. But I can promise I won't treat us like something disposable." Her eyes shone when she looked at me. "Us?" she repeated. "Too soon?" "No." She shook her head. "Say it again." I smiled, softer this time. "Us." Grace's hand found the front of my work jacket. She didn't pull me in, she just held on. "I want to try," she said. "Not pretend. Not hide behind jokes. Try." My heart did something embarrassingly young. "Then we try," I said. Her gaze dropped to my mouth. Every sensible thought I had packed a bag and left. "Liam?" "Yeah? If you don't kiss me in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to start overthinking." I pushed off the truck. "Can't have that." I touched her cheek first because I needed to know she was still with me. She leaned into my palm like she'd been waiting there too. Then I kissed her. Slow, careful for about half a second. Then Grace made a small sound in her throat and kissed me back, and careful became impossible. Her hand slid up my chest. Mine settled at her waist, pulling her closer, not enough to trap, just enough to tell the truth. She tasted like mint gum and surprise, like the end of one life and the beginning of another. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. She laughed under her breath. "Oh no." My stomach dropped. "Oh no." That was really good. Relief hit so hard I laughed too. "You scared me." "Welcome to dating me. I'm adorable but poorly labeled." "Dating," I said. Her eyes widened like she'd heard herself at the same time I had. Then she smiled. "Yes, dating." I kissed her again, shorter because I could, because she let me, because she rose onto her toes to meet me. Her phone buzzed once inside her coat pocket. We both ignored it. For a minute, maybe two, Grace stayed in my arms in the grocery store parking lot, and whatever waited on Sunday could wait. Then she sighed. "I should check it." I didn't want her to, but wanting wasn't ownership. So I let my hands fall to her hips and nodded. She took out her phone. Another text from Audrey. "Mom says Ryan is bringing flowers. She thinks it'll be romantic." Grace stared at it. Then she looked up at me, her chin lifting in that stubborn, beautiful way. "Come with me Sunday," she said, "not as a decoy." I waited. Her fingers slid into mine again. "As mine." "As mine." 2 words. That was all Grace said in the parking lot, but they followed me home like headlights in my rearview mirror. They sat beside me at red lights. They walked into my kitchen with the grocery bags. They stood there while Grace took off her coat and looked suddenly shy in a room she'd entered 100 times before. My kitchen had seen Grace in every mood, barefoot and sleepy, furious after work. Tipsy on New Year's Eve, wearing a paper crown and declaring my spice cabinet a cry for help. But it had never seen her like this. Mine. Not possessed, not claimed like property. Chosen. That was different. That was everything. I put the bread on the counter and forgot what hands were for. Grace noticed, of course. "You're staring," she said. "I'm adjusting to a major life event." We held hands and made out by your truck. You called it dating. She bit her lip, and I almost dropped the eggs. "I did," she said. You can't just say things like that and expect me to alphabetize groceries. You alphabetize groceries? No, but I might start. I'm under emotional strain. Grace laughed and the tightness left her shoulders. Good. I wanted that. I wanted to be the place her body remembered it could relax. She moved around my kitchen like she belonged there because she did. She put strawberries in the sink, cheese in the fridge, pasta in the cabinet. Then she paused with the jar of marinara in her hand. What happens now? She asked. I leaned against the counter. Now we make dinner. Her gaze lifted. I knew that wasn't what she meant. I crossed the kitchen slowly. And after that, I'll drive you home if you want, or we'll watch something terrible and pretend to care about the plot, or we'll talk until we both panic. I stopped in front of her. But I'm not rushing you, Grace. Something flickered across her face. Relief. Want. Frustration too, maybe. What if I want you to rush a little? She asked. My heart kicked. Grace Miller, who usually used sarcasm as a moat, was looking at me like I was the bridge. I reached past her and took the marinara from her hand, setting it on the counter without looking away. How little? Her cheeks colored. Don't make me quantify desire in your kitchen. I'm an electrician. Measurements matter. Liam, I smiled. There she is. She rolled her eyes, but her hands came to rest lightly at my waist. The contact went through my t-shirt like a live wire. I don't want to pretend nothing changed, she said. We don't have to. And I don't want you to treat me like glass. I won't, but I also might freak out. I figured. Her eyes narrowed. You figured? Baby, I have watched you take 20 minutes to choose a birthday card because sincerity made you suspicious. Her mouth opened, yet then she smiled. That one was on purpose, she said. Yeah. Say it again. I bent closer. Baby. Her fingers tightened in my shirt. The kiss started soft, almost questioning. Grace answered by leaning into me, and the question became yes. Her body fit against mine in a way that made every almost touch from the last 10 years feel like a rehearsal. I cupped her face. She rose on her toes. The counter pressed into my hip. Somewhere, a box of pasta slid off the edge and hit the floor. Neither of us cared. When we finally broke apart, she was breathing fast, forehead against my chest. I'm trying not to overthink, she whispered. I pressed my mouth to her hair. How's that going? Terribly. Kiss me again. So I did. Not because kissing solved anything, because she asked. Because I could feel her choosing the moment instead of fear. Dinner took forever. We burned the garlic bread slightly because Grace distracted me by sitting on the counter and swinging her feet while I stirred sauce. She claimed it was not her fault I had the attention span of a Victorian suitor seeing an ankle. I told her my attention span had survived industrial wiring and could survive ankles. Then she crossed one leg over the other. The bread suffered. We ate at my small kitchen table with mismatched plates and one candle Grace found in a drawer. Why do you own a candle called Midnight Orchard? She asked. My aunt gave it to me. It smells like a haunted apple. I don't question gifts from Aunt May. Grace dipped her bread into sauce. This is a date? I looked at her over my glass of water. She looked startled by her own words again, but she didn't take them back. Yeah, I said. It is. Her smile came slowly. Our first date is pasta in your kitchen. And slightly haunted bread. It's kind of perfect. I wanted to remember her exactly like that. Candlelight on her face, hair tucked behind one ear, sauce at the corner of her mouth. I reached across the table and brushed it away with my thumb. Grace went still. Then she caught my wrist and kissed the pad of my thumb. A simple touch? Devastating. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For making you wait. I set my glass down. You didn't make me do anything. I knew, she admitted. Not always, not clearly. But sometimes I'd catch you looking at me and I'd think… She swallowed. I'd think if I turned toward it, my whole life would change. It has changed. I know. Her voice softened. I don't hate it. I reached for her hand across the table. She gave it to me. We sat there like that until the candle burned low and the plates went cold. Later on the couch, she curled into my side like she had 100 times before and nothing like before. Her head was on my shoulder, my arm around her. The movie played unwatched. Sunday, she said into the quiet. My hand moved slowly over her upper arm. Yeah, my mom is going to be awful. Probably. Ryan will do the wounded gentleman routine. I hate that routine. You've seen it? I've seen you apologize for having boundaries after talking to him for 5 minutes. She tipped her head back to look at me. That sounds pathetic. No. I touched her chin. It sounds like someone taught you love required managing everyone else's feelings first. Her eyes grew shiny. Liam! I'm not saying I'll be perfect, I said. I'll probably get mad. I'll definitely want to say something unhelpful. Please don't challenge Ryan to a duel. I make no promises if he brings carnations. She laughed, then tucked her face into my neck. After a moment, she whispered, If I freeze, squeeze my hand. My throat tightened. Okay. And if I try to pretend I'm fine? I'll ask if you want to leave. And if I say no because I'm stubborn? I'll remind you that you're allowed to choose yourself. She was quiet so long I thought she might have fallen asleep. Then her lips brushed my neck. Not accidental, not friendly. My entire body went still. Thank you, she whispered. I turned my face toward hers. Grace? She lifted her head. This kiss was different from the others. Slower. Less discovery. More promise. Her hand slid over my jaw, her thumb touching the corner of my mouth like she was learning me by memory. When she pulled back, her eyes searched mine. I want Sunday to know, she said. Sunday? My mother, Audrey, Ryan, the whole suffocating dining room. She took a breath. I want them to know I'm not available for old stories anymore. I kissed her forehead. Then we'll tell them. No. Her fingers threaded through mine. I'll tell them. You just stand there looking handsome and emotionally inconvenient. I grinned. Handsome? Don't get smug. Too late. She slept on my couch that night, not because she had to, but because halfway through the second movie she said, I don't want to go yet. And I said, then don't. I gave her the bed. She refused. We compromised with blankets, the couch, and a line of pillows that lasted 8 minutes before she mumbled, This is stupid, and settled against me. I didn't sleep much. Grace did, breathing soft against my chest, her hand curled in my shirt. On Sunday afternoon, I stood on her mother's porch with Grace beside me, her fingers laced through mine. Through the front window, I saw Ryan's car in the driveway. Grace saw it too. Her grip tightened. I squeezed once. She looked at me, nervous and beautiful and brave. Then she lifted our joined hands and kissed my knuckles. Ready? I asked. No, she said, but I'm choosing you anyway. Then she rang the doorbell. Grace's mother opened the door wearing pearls and an expression sharp enough to slice bread. Grace? She said. Then her eyes dropped to our joined hands. There was a pause, a small one, a loaded one. Grace's fingers tightened around mine, but she didn't let go. Hi, Mom. Vivian Miller looked at me the way people looked at an unexpected bill. Liam, she said. Mrs. Miller. How nice, I didn't realize you were coming. Grace lifted her chin. I invited him. Another pause. From somewhere inside the house, a man laughed. Ryan. Grace's hand went cold in mine. I rubbed my thumb over her knuckles once, the signal we'd agreed on. Not rescue, not interruption. Just, I'm here and you're still you. She glanced at me. I smiled. Not my public smile. Not the polite one. Hers. Her shoulders eased a fraction. Vivian stepped aside. Well, come in then. The dining room smelled like roast chicken, rosemary, and tension. Audrey was already seated at the table, wineglass in hand, eyes widening when she saw me. She didn't look displeased, more like someone watching a long-awaited storm finally break. Ryan stood near the sideboard holding a bouquet. Of course he did. Red roses. He was handsome in the polished way that made you aware he owned a steamer, and probably used phrases like personal brand without irony. His smile faltered when he saw my hand in Grace's. Then he recovered. Grace, He said warmly, "You look beautiful." Grace's fingers shifted in mine. "Thanks." Ryan looked at me. "Liam, didn't expect you." "Funny," Audrey muttered. "I did." Vivian shot her a look. Ryan stepped forward with the roses. "These are for you." Grace didn't move to take them. For one long second, the whole room seemed to lean toward her. I wanted to say something. Every part of me wanted to step between her and the expectations settling over her shoulders. But this was hers. She had asked me to stand beside her, not speak over her. Grace took a breath. "Ryan, I'm not accepting flowers from you." His smile tightened. "They're just flowers." "No," she said. Her voice shook, but it held. "They're not. Not with my mother inviting you here without asking me. Not with everyone pretending this is romantic instead of uncomfortable." Audrey's eyebrows climbed. Vivian's mouth thinned. "Grace, don't be dramatic." Grace flinched. I felt it through our hands this time. She squeezed me first. My heart nearly broke and rebuilt itself in the same beat. She looked at her mother. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear." Ryan lowered the roses. "Is this because of him?" he asked, nodding at me. Grace turned to me. For a second, her eyes softened so completely I forgot there were other people in the room. Then she looked back at Ryan. "No," she said. "This is because of me." I had never been prouder of another human being in my life. "And," she added, lifting our joined hands, "Liam is here because I want him here." Vivian stared. "As what, exactly?" There it was. The question that had been chasing us since the grocery store. Grace's palm was damp against mine. Her pulse jumped. She was terrified, but she didn't look away. "As the man I'm dating," she said. Silence. Audrey took a sip of wine and whispered, "Finally." I almost laughed. Ryan did not. Vivian looked like someone had moved all the furniture in her house 3 inches to the left. "Dating," she repeated. "Yes." "For how long?" Grace glanced at me and a blush touched her cheeks. "Officially," I said, unable to help myself. "Since the cereal aisle." Audrey choked on her wine. Grace's mouth twitched. Vivian looked between us. "This is not amusing." "It kind of is," Grace said. That was when I knew she was coming back to herself. Ryan set the roses on the sideboard with careful control. "Grace, can we talk privately?" "No." He blinked. She swallowed, then said it again stronger. "No. Anything you need to say, you can say here." "I don't think that's fair." Grace laughed once, humorless. "Ryan, you showing up to my mother's house with flowers after I told you months ago we were done isn't fair." Vivian sighed. "He came because he cares." Grace turned toward her. "Mom, he came because you invited him." Her mother's cheeks colored. The room tightened again. I stepped closer to Grace, not in front of her, beside her. Our shoulders touched. She leaned into me by half an inch. That half inch felt like a vow. Ryan's eyes dropped to the contact. "So, that's it?" he asked. 10 years of friendship and suddenly he's the answer?" Grace looked up at me. There was so much in her face that my chest hurt. Fear, yes, but also wonder. And a question she had asked in half a dozen ways since Thursday. "Are you still here?" I raised. Our joined hands and kissed her knuckles, right there in her mother's dining room, with Ryan watching and Vivian simmering and Audrey grinning into her glass. "I'm not an answer," I said softly, only to Grace. "I'm a choice. Same as you are for me." Her eyes shone. Then, in front of all of them, Grace reached up, caught the front of my shirt, and kissed me. It wasn't long, it wasn't showy, but it was certain. When she pulled back, her lips were curved and her voice was quiet. "Baby," she whispered, "just for me." My whole body went warm. "Yes?" She smiled. "Don't let me panic by politeness." I grinned. "Never." Audrey set down her wineglass. "I would like to state for the record that I support this development, and also the phrase panic by politeness." Vivian pressed 2 fingers to her temple. "Dinner is getting cold." "Then let's eat," Grace said. And somehow we did. It was the strangest meal of my life. Ryan sat across from us, stiff-backed and wounded. Vivian kept asking questions with edges hidden in them. So, Liam, is this serious? Grace answered before I could. Yes. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. She glanced at me, startled by herself again. I leaned close. You keep saying my favorite things today. Her cheeks went pink. Under the table, her knee bumped mine. On purpose. I nearly forgot how chicken worked. Vivian noticed everything. And your friendship? She asked. You're willing to risk that. Grace set her fork down. The table went quiet. That's what I told myself for a long time, she said. That wanting more meant risking everything. But not choosing is a choice too. Her hand found mine under the table. And I'm tired of making fear feel like wisdom. Audrey's face softened. Mine must have done something worse because Grace looked at me and whispered, Stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like you're about to build a chapel in the backyard. I know wiring. She laughed, and the sound changed the room. Not completely. Vivian was still Vivian. Ryan was still watching us like he couldn't decide whether to be angry or embarrassed. But Grace was laughing with my hand in hers at her mother's table. That mattered. After dinner, Audrey cornered Vivian in the kitchen under the noble pretense of helping with dishes. Ryan stepped out to take a call or pretend to. I didn't care which. Grace and I ended up in the hallway near the old family photos. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for an hour. You were incredible, I said. I was sweaty. Also incredible. I think my soul left my body when I said dating. It came back when you kissed me. She leaned against the wall, smiling tiredly. You liked that? I'm considering writing it into my will. She tugged me closer by my belt loop. My pulse jumped. Grace Miller. What? I survived dinner. I deserve a prize. I'm the prize. Don't sound so pleased. Impossible. Her hand slid up my chest and mine settled at her waist. In the soft hallway light, away from the table and the old expectations, she looked less like she'd survived something and more like she was beginning. I meant what I said, she whispered. Fear isn't wisdom. I brushed my nose against hers. And me? Your trouble. Good trouble? The kind I want to come home with me. The air left my lungs. Yeah? She nodded, suddenly shy. Not for anything dramatic, just I don't want tonight to end at my mother's door. I kissed her then, slow and deep, letting her feel every yes I had. Behind us, someone cleared their throat. We separated. Ryan stood at the end of the hall, keys in hand, face unreadable. I'm leaving, he said. Grace's hand slipped into mine without hesitation. Okay, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. I hope you know what you're doing. Grace looked at me, then back at him. I do, she said. For once, I really do. Ryan left without another word. The front door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow sounded louder than any slammed door could have. Grace didn't move for a second. Then she let out a breath and turned into me, not collapsing, not hiding, choosing. I wrapped my arms around her and she pressed her face into my chest right there in her mother's hallway, under a framed school photo of herself with missing front teeth and a crooked ponytail. You okay? I murmured. No, she said against my shirt. But I'm proud of me. I smiled into her hair. Me too, baby. She pinched my side. Ow! You can't use the grocery store voice when I'm emotionally fragile. That was my supportive boyfriend voice. Her head lifted slowly. Boyfriend. The word hung between us, warm and new. Grace's eyes searched mine. Is that what you are? If you'll have me. Her face softened in a way I felt behind my ribs. I'll have you, she whispered. Gray shirts and all. I kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then stopped just short of her mouth. She frowned. Why did you stop? Building suspense. I hate suspense. I know. Her fingers curled into my shirt. Liam. I kissed her then, and she smiled against my mouth like happiness had surprised her, and she intended to let it. When we walked back into the dining room, Vivian was standing by the table with her arms crossed. Audrey lingered near the kitchen doorway, pretending she wasn't ready to intervene with a serving spoon if necessary. Vivian looked at Grace, then at me, then at our hands. I didn't handle this well, she said. Grace went still beside me. Vivian's pride fought visibly with whatever maternal instinct remained under all that polish. I thought Ryan was stable, she continued. I thought you needed stable. Grace's voice was quiet. I needed to be heard. Vivian's mouth trembled once before she firmed it. Yes, I see that now. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't enough to fix years. But Grace looked down, breathed in, then looked back up. Thank you for saying that. Vivian nodded, then glanced at me. Take care of her. Grace immediately said, Mom. I squeezed her hand, but I answered Vivian anyway. I'm going to love her, I said. Taking care makes it sound like she's a project. She isn't. Grace's fingers tightened around mine. Vivian blinked, maybe offended, maybe impressed. Audrey whispered, Oh, I like him. Grace pulled me toward the door before anyone could ruin the moment. Outside, the night was cool and clear. The porch light turned her hair gold at the edges. She stood on the top step, looking at my truck parked at the curb, then back at me. Will you take me home? She asked. Yours or mine? Her smile was slow. Mine. I want to make coffee in the morning and have you complain that my mugs are too small. They are too small. They're elegant. They hold 3 sips. They encourage mindfulness. They encourage refills. She laughed, and I kissed her again because I was her boyfriend now and apparently allowed to be wildly irresponsible with my self-control. At her apartment, nothing dramatic happened. That was the best part. She changed into soft pajama pants and an old sweatshirt, handed me a toothbrush still in the package because she was apparently optimistic but not reckless, and made tea neither of us drank. We sat on her couch with our knees touching, then our shoulders. Then she tucked herself against me and said, I keep thinking I'll wake up and we'll pretend this didn't happen. I turned so I could see her face. Do you want to pretend? No. Then we won't. What if it's hard? It will be. She sighed. That was not the romantic answer. The romantic answer is, I'll choose you when it's hard. Her eyes grew bright. That one works, she whispered. I cupped her cheek. I love you, Grace. There it was, not planned, not perfect. No candlelight, no music, no dramatic rain against the windows. Just her couch, her 2 small mugs, and my heart finally telling the truth. Grace stared at me, lips parted. For one terrible second, I thought I'd gone too far. Then she climbed into my lap and kissed me so hard I forgot every fear I'd ever had. I love you too, she said against my mouth. I think I have for a long time. I held her like the words were something sacred she'd placed in my hands. Say it again, I whispered. She smiled. I love you, baby. And I was done for. 6 months later, Grace still bought too much cheese, still claimed my gray shirts were a sign of spiritual defeat, and still blushed whenever I called her baby in public. Only now she reached for my hand first. Sunday dinners changed slowly. Vivian learned to call before inviting people. Audrey became our loudest supporter and claimed she deserved credit because she had witnessed the cereal aisle prophecy from afar, even though she hadn't been there. Ryan became a name we didn't need to flinch at anymore. Grace and I built something quieter than a movie ending and better because of it. We fought once about cabinet space, twice about my habit of leaving work boots by the door. She cried the first time she gave me a drawer at her apartment, then accused me of looking smug when I folded socks into it. I was smug. A year after that night, we went back to Maple and Vine Market. It wasn't planned. We needed eggs, bread, and according to Grace, a responsible amount of cheese, which turned out to mean 4 kinds. We turned into the cereal aisle and she stopped. The same shelf had been fixed. The same cinnamon squares were still too expensive. Grace looked at me, eyes dancing. This is historic ground. I should put up a plaque. What would it say? I pretended to think. Here stood Liam Walker, who lost control of one word and gained an entire life. Her smile went soft. Then she reached for the top shelf, very slowly, very dramatically. I knew the performance when I saw it. Careful, I said. She glanced over her shoulder. Careful what? I stepped in behind her close enough that my chest brushed her back, close enough to feel her lean into me. I lowered my mouth to her ear. Careful, baby. Grace turned in my arms, right there between the cereal and oatmeal, slid her hands up my chest and kissed me like she had never been afraid of wanting me. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. Say it again, she whispered. So I did. And this time, I didn't slip. What would you have done if you accidentally called your best friend baby in the middle of a grocery store, and they squeezed your hand and asked you to say it again? Have you ever had a friendship change because one honest word slipped out at the wrong, perfect time? Tell your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships, where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.